So I would ask you how you are, but I know how you are because you're frazzled, just as I am. Where we spent a half an hour trying to figure out if we got anything for Reggie or if we just traded 3 seconds just to dump his salary, which is what the Nuggets did. So how are you handling all this?
So today's Thursday. We're recording this right after day two of the NBA draft, after the second round. And a lot has happened since our last episode in the NBA, and a lot has happened for the Nuggets in the last uh, 20 hours or so, and especially in the last 45 minutes. So we're just trying to figure some of this stuff out, and I'm definitely more frazzled than I would like to be because I do a lot of pretty like extensive planning for each show.
Yeah.
So when news hits like 45 minutes before, actually not before we're supposed to record, 15 is where we're supposed to record, and then I spend the next at least half an hour trying to just like get the details, and then more news starts coming out.
Hmm.
It definitely throws things off a bit, but it'll be interesting to work through this episode with you today, Will.
Yeah, we planned to film this episode after the second round of the NBA draft. Little did we know that the Reggie Jackson trade would happen in the middle of it. We didn't even trade into the second round to pick anybody. It was just a straight up move. But the news about KCP opting out also got released right before that. So, I mean, that was not a surprise. We knew that was going to happen. But I'm keep wondering if those are like related in some way where maybe there's some discussions with KCP going on right now or something like that. I don't know. But
We should probably put like a little bit of the timeline out there for context because we were going to talk about the Nuggets first round draft pick DaRon Holmes, and after the pick was made, there was like a short little press conference with Calvin Booth, the GM of the Nuggets, and he made some very specific comments about KCP because he was asked about what's going on with his pending free agency and how willing the team was to go into the second apron, etc. Those comments set Twitter ablaze because he basically said, after listening to it a couple of times over, it's not that he was trying to be, I don't think he was trying to be mean. I think that like Cal is just a very like direct person, and he effectively said like, yeah, we're going to miss KCP, but I have confidence in Christian Brown's ability to step into that starting role. And we're going to have to like move forward if KCP doesn't want to stay because that's the nature of free agency and whatever. And that's what he said. Right. And that's like the charitable reading of it. I will say my critiques of particularly the part where he's like, oh, it's all about this is the nature of unrestricted free agency and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but you could always just offer more money. Right.
mhm,
So it is unrestricted free agency, but especially these days, very scarcely do I see a player reject the offer of more money to
yeah,
go somewhere else for less money, right? But he's right. KCB can go wherever he wants to go. So those were his comments last night. Then we got
yeah.
the news today. It was right before the draft started, I believe, maybe an hour or so before, that we got the news about KCP intending to decline his player option. And I pointed out that it was kind of early because, as we stated in our off-season preview episode, we're recording this on June 27th. He has until June 29th to decide to either opt in or opt out of his player option. The most likely scenario, whether he was going to stay or go, was that he'd opt out. There were some very rare, in my opinion, scenarios where he could maybe opt in and the Nuggets could extend him off of that number. But the Nuggets could always extend him even if he opts out. And obviously, if he opts out, he can explore free agency with other teams, especially teams like potentially Magic or the Sixers that are willing to offer him more money up front. So that's like the backdrop to this news about Reggie being traded, not
Hmm.
not for 3 second round picks, but with 3 second round picks in what I mean, there's no other way to read this deal than as a salary dump.
Hmm.
He got sent to the Charlotte Hornets, right?
I know it's kind of funny
Yeah,
because we were waiting for the Reggie option and he opted in, which
he
was
opted
what
in.
everyone
Yes,
expected.
that is something else that happened
Um,
since our last show for sure.
yeah, and there were Nuggets fans who were frustrated because they don't want Reggie on the team anymore, which is fair. But I thought, you calm the Nuggets fans down. We need him to opt in to either put in a trade or do something. I didn't know that we were just going to go out and dump his salary. So, but that's what they did. And we'll see if that little bit of wiggle room can keep us under an apron, the second apron specifically, because there's no way we'd be under the first. So, yeah, we already have such a lack of ball handlers. We've been saying it on the show, and now we're another one down. Not that Reggie was the one that we wanted, because we knew that he didn't mesh well with Jamal, and we were looking for some other skills. But it really sucks to lose him without knowing what other plans Booth has. And obviously, Booth gave
Jalen
comments.
Pickett.
Yeah, Jalen Pickett. This does pave the way, but I just don't think of him as like a realistic option. But that's the thing, is Booth has his idea of what he wants, and I just don't feel that great about it right now in terms of, let's just let CB start and then Pickett be the backup point guard. I mean, how do you feel with that? Do you feel comfortable with that? I mean, there's things about it I like. Nothing's perfect, but I would rather alternative options.
I actually I have no problem in the kind of larger scheme of things with Pickett being the backup point guard if there is at least another veteran secondary ball handler on coming off of the bench.
Yeah.
But that's not the case right now. So for example, if we had like an Oubre or a Bogdan Bogdanovic also off the bench, that would be fine. And it's not even just because, I mean, Pickett is going to be effectively a rookie because he played, what, 100 minutes last season total and mostly in garbage time. But I don't know about what his ceiling is going to be in terms of being a ball handler in the playoffs. And as of right now, because Reggie is gone, we have two ball handlers on this team, including Jalen Pickett, that are, you know, on standard contracts, not counting Trey Alexander, as you talked about, who's on this two-way deal. And the players who are on standard contracts are the ones who can play in the playoffs. I don't know if the plan is to get someone like we've talked about, like a Chris Dunn or a DeLon Wright on a minimum deal that can be that secondary ball handler off the bench. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's
And
what I'm
as
thinking and
little as I
hoping for,
understood
but
about where the front office was trying to go in terms of trying to bolster that ball handler depth, I am more confused than ever now, because as much as I had a feeling that Reggie would not be on the roster next season to make room for Jalen Pickett to give him that runway. But I thought that his salary was going to be used in a trade, but instead they went the route of this salary dump, spent 3 second round picks to do it. And now I have no idea what their plans are
yeah. I had just
to
tweeted,
address.
I was just tweeting, like, I hope we keep KCP. Like, you know, we could sign him for something and maybe still be under the second apron without that contract. But otherwise, I'm not really sure what the plan is. It still does clear up a room if you do, like, sign a free agent or whatever.
The problem
But
is we're not a team we're not under the salary cap.
yeah.
So we're operating in free agency exclusively. To sign free agents, we're operating exclusively under exceptions. The
Hmm.
exceptions that we have access to as a team are the veteran minimum exception, as we've talked about in the past, which is going to be available at all levels, even if we were to go over the second apron. And if we're under the second apron, which we are, seems like, targeting to do by this Reggie salary dump, we have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception. Now, my issue is if this was not done to clear space under the second apron to extend KCP while still staying under the second apron, and KCP leaves, we have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception, but we would have had that anyway, even if Reggie was still on the roster. And in
Yeah.
addition to that, we would have also had Reggie's salary to either trade by itself or trade along other salaries like Zeke's or whoever in other deals. And we would have had the second round picks to use as sweeteners, because obviously you're not like trading Reggie for a better player straight up, right? Like
Hmm.
you're going to have to include something else in that deal. That is no longer an option. We have the singular salaries that are available, and maybe we try to aggregate Zeke with one of the smaller things like maybe Hunter Tyson or whatever, but I have reasons to think that that is not at all in the plans. And we don't have those second round picks to act as sweeteners in case we wanted to dump a different contract like Zeke's. That's not an option
Yeah.
either. So what I'm saying is that if this is not done in the service of re-signing KCP, all it did was limit our flexibility going forward in this
Hmm.
offseason. There's
Right.
nothing that this helped us to do actively
Hmm.
other than maybe
this
extend
KCP.
KCP because everything else we would have already had access to if KCP left.
Yeah, and it would really, if they do get under the second apron for this next season, that's pretty much all we get because the players are going to get more expensive and will be going over eventually. But it would be good to have flexibility in the year with one season under our belt, under the second apron, if we're able to do that, and if that's how the Nuggets feel they want to go forward.
Also, if let's say that KCP decided to walk, they could have tried to dump this salary at any point. If they were willing to trade 3 second-round picks to dump a $5 million expiring salary, that could have been done at any point. Now, I
Hmm.
knew they wanted to move Reggie in order to create runway for Pickett. It seemed like the front office is incredibly high on him and really didn't like that Malone didn't give him much run last year. But I thought we would at least be able to use that salary in some other positive deal to address the other issues on the roster. That's obviously no longer an option. And even if it wasn't an option by the end of the offseason, we could have done that deal then to try to, like, I don't know,
Hmm.
continue.
That's why I'm like keyed in on the timing of this,
Yeah,
hoping it's the KCP related move.
no, I agree.
Really quick though, obviously, I was pretty mad at that Reggie contract heading into last season. Then he played pretty well as backup for Jamal, and Nuggets fans and the community was pretty high on him and grateful that he did pretty well in Jamal's absence. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but he was pretty serviceable. Now we're at a point. Obviously, he didn't play that much in the playoffs, and we saw how those lineups with Jamal and him playing at the same time were rough on the defensive end. Are you surprised that the value of Reggie was this low, where it was like you had to package that much just to get off of him?
My thing is that I don't even know if it was that low. I think part of what's happening right now, so we moved him to Charlotte, and I tweeted this out. There's a few teams that have this cap space and they're not using it to like sign free agents. There's not Philly or Orlando that are like teams that are trying to be competitive right now, but teams like Detroit, Charlotte, maybe Utah. Although I haven't seen any deals to Utah yet, they could turn into one of these teams that wants to use their cap space as a destination for other teams wanting to dump salaries in order to get assets back. So in this case,
Hmm.
Charlotte is taking on Reggie's salary for those picks. Now I don't know what kind of competition there was basically
Right.
for like parking your car in that garage
Yeah, but that's where they
or like
settled
dumping
three
your.
picks. It's like,
That's the thing is I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about this when we talk about the actual first rounder DaRon, but he had to move up in the draft. Cal had to move up in the draft to get him, and I think he had good reason to think that he needed to move up. I had
hmm.
seen lots of reports about the usual suspect GMs that tend to have like the same taste in prospects as Cal being interested in DaRon, kind of fills their needs. The picks that they had been most interested in had maybe been taken earlier, and the Bucks were going to go in the spot up. So Denver felt the need to move up to ahead of that so that they could get their guy. They did that. They spent 3 second-round picks to do so. I think in like a normal, I don't know if it's like this is not a normal year, and things are like that kind of transaction is maybe more expensive, especially because we happen to be dealing with the Phoenix Suns, who is incredibly desperate for assets. Maybe there was like a bidding war with Milwaukee who wanted to move up so that they could ensure that Denver didn't jump them. I don't know. We don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes, but I would have hoped they would only have to spend like 2 second-round picks to move up in that situation, but they did spend three. So I don't know if this is a case where it was the competition or the overpayment, because we've also seen other instances where I feel like Cal overpaid in, let's say, like the deal to get Thomas Bryant um not last season but the one before.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
championship
like yeah,
season.
last year,
Yeah.
the championship season at the deadline, spent 2 second-round picks to get Thomas Bryant in that
Hmm.
deal, and I'm like, in retrospect, it's like
Yeah. You
you
might be
kind
a
of got
little
fleeced
too
there.
loose with those second rounders.
And yeah,
Uh,
and now we actually have no second-round picks left to trade.
yeah.
Ryan Blackburn pointed out we have one tradable pick for the rest of this season, and it's the 2031 first round pick. And then yeah, these three for Reggie. I really
Yeah.
like. I'm so. I feel like I normally have more coherent answers to give on these recordings, but I'm so like frazzled from just not having had adequate time to fully process everything that happened with the team
Hmm.
at once,
Yeah.
because it was the KCP opt out news came at like simultaneously, because I think Shams announced them basically back to back, with Jamal
Yeah.
is
The
expected
extension.
to sign his extension, which we'll talk about in like a couple minutes. That happened all right before the second round started. Then I'm watching all of these picks come in, and then middle of the second round of the draft, we find out about this Reggie news, and it does not help that Adrian Wojnarowski, who is he's just like manic to beat Shams to the punch. There was news that he put out, there was like some deal that Toronto made to, they sent Jalen McDaniels to the Sacramento Kings for Davion Mitchell. We're not going to talk about that deal in depth. They sent those two players to the Toronto Raptors for Jalen McDaniels, and Woj he tweeted out half of the deal. He tweeted out the Sacramento half of the deal. And I was like, oh, for what? And then like a minute or two later, he's like, for, and then like Jalen McDaniels, blah, 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 blah. Like, really? You're tweeting out halves of deals right now just so that you can beat Shams to the punch. So I mentioned that because in the case with this Reggie Jackson trade, he tweets out that the Denver Nuggets were trading Reggie for 3 seconds. Then I'm like, oh, are we trying to trade back into the second round of this draft? Because
Yeah.
we had traded our second round pick
That's what
as
I
one of the
thought.
three that Phoenix took for DaRon. So I was like, so what are we doing right now? Like, I was very confused. Everyone's trying to figure out what happened. And then Woj like edits the tweet, whatever, and like resends it out that actually, no, we're sending 3 second round picks with Reggie in what is a salary dump move. I was actually like, why is Charlotte paying 3 second round picks for Reggie? I guess expiring contracts are valuable, but apparently not. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's like we were including him in trades, like we were saying, and just speculating
In
what kind of
trades for ball
value,
handlers,
yeah, what kind
that
of,
could potentially play in the playoffs.
yeah, what can we get back for him? How's he going to be used? Like, I hope he opts in so we can use him for something at least. And then he opted in, and we lost 3 second round picks. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. And we had been, talking about
And
the
if I'm
second
like, if nothing else,
apron.
he's an expiring contract.
Yeah. We had been talking about the second apron and, aggregating salaries. And obviously, Zeke and Reggie were two where that can add up to something. It was unlikely that was going to happen, though, with the separate apron looming. So I wasn't counting on that, but at least you could trade them separately. It looks like maybe there just wasn't a market out there. Maybe people were just not going to want to trade any kind of asset for Reggie Jackson after the season that he had, which is still surprising to me. I think maybe someone would be like, hey, like he could be
Here's my
something for
thing
us.
is like, it's not really about him as a player. Like, that contract was more valuable to us clearly than it was to any other team, because we could have
Yeah.
at least used it as matching salary. And again, those second round picks are really, this has been the case since last summer. And a lot of NBA like writers and commentators have been pointing out that especially the expensive contending teams have been stockpiling these second round picks for use as kind of lubricant in
Yeah,
other
just
kinds of
movers.
transactions. Like we talked about, Cal moved up 6 spots in the draft to choose DaRon Holmes, and he used 3 second round picks to do it.
Yeah, which I
Um,
was fine with.
yeah, which I was fine. I was like, okay, we got our guy, and especially one of them was like super late in this draft. So I was like, we're probably not going to get who we want anyway. Maybe we can get, if we really really want them, we're contacting the agents and trying to get them as undrafted free agents. So it was really like 2.5 second round picks, but to use them in a salary dump. By the time this episode comes out, who knows? Maybe we get
Hmm.
news by like tonight that KCP is intending to sign an extension with the Nuggets. But that is the only thing that this would have been helpful for with respect to roster building. It's really funny because of all the scenarios that I contemplated with respect to KCP, the one I did not at all think of was maybe the Nuggets will try to keep KCP without him opting into the contract and trying to like finagle the margins of staying under the second apron. So he's opting out, and we're giving him a deal that's bigger than, where the first year is bigger than the player option if should he have opted in. And then we try to dump other players to try to stand at second apron. That's not a scenario that I contemplated. I think I basically
Right.
thought about every other way that this could have gone. Like, if he leaves, what do we do with the enhanced flexibility? If he stays, what do we do with like more limited flexibility? If he stays, what do we do to get just a little bit more flexibility so that we can do some of the stuff we would have been able to do if he left. Not this.
Yeah. I would have been shocked if any individual out there predicted any scenario with Reggie that would have been correct. Even if it was like a trade, like, hey, I like this trade with Reggie, I still would have been like, wow, good for you. You guessed that. This one was definitely more wild than those proposals. So, yeah, it's funny going from DaRon Holmes, who everyone in Nuggets Nation knew that's the guy and that was the target. And, there couldn't be a better pick to where like Malone and Booth could be like unified on a move. Like it's hard
I
to
mean, do
see
we know
both of them
that? We
being
don't know
mad.
how Malone
I just
feels
feel like
about any
how
of this, especially with the comments that we talked about him making about maybe trading our
the
first round
pick.
pick in this draft for a
Yeah.
veteran player, presumably, but instead potentially KCP is about to walk, and then we just salary dumped Reggie.
Well, with reports of the Nuggets maybe promising Duran and like the chance of him not being there, I think floating the idea of maybe trading it is a good idea potentially if there weren't good picks there. But obviously he
Yeah.
was there, and everyone's happy about that. I think that was amazing for us because I think he could have gone higher easily. We had to trade up to get him, so I would be shocked if Malone and Booth weren't aligned on that pick. I don't know how they are aligned on this Reggie pick because Malone
Because
was
Reggie
playing
was
Reggie. Malone,
Malone
yeah,
played Reggie a lot.
yeah. So if it's like some crazy, soap opera scenario where Malone really wanted to keep Reggie or thought they could use him to get somebody else because he just doesn't want to play Pickett or whatever, and
So
Booth,
here's my thing is there's no way that he wanted this, and I'll tell you
yeah,
why I know that. If he would have been fine with playing Pickett, then Reggie would still be on the roster because there'd be some understanding that regardless of Reggie being there, Pickett is going to get runway. But clearly, the front office does not think that that would have been the case. So they had to move Reggie by apparently any means necessary. And my thing is, I always thought that Reggie would not, again, I didn't think Reggie would be here, but I thought that his salary, his expiring contract, would have been used as at least matching salary in some other deal that we moved to
mhm.
get another veteran player.
Yeah. Well, I just thought no matter what, Reggie was not going to be on the Nuggets next season. So I don't know what the internal discussions are. I'm not surprised that he's gone. It's just the manner in which he's gone that surprised me. But is there anything else you want to say about that? And otherwise, we can just move to Duran, talk
Yeah.
about something positive until
Yeah,
we'll
let's
circle
let's talk
back.
about something positive and something that we know a little bit more about because we don't know. This could be the first domino in some other move, or maybe there's some maneuvering that I am not aware of being an option to the team that has nothing to do with KCP being extended. I highly doubt it. Yeah, we'll just look out for that. But we can definitely move on to some more positive things.
Yeah, we were also happy to see that we traded up to the 22nd pick and selected DaRon Holmes from Dayton. It was a great move. We had previewed it on this show. Everybody who was in Nuggets media or who talks on Twitter, who has a channel, previewed DaRon Holmes. And thanks to CT Fazio for being on our last show and talking about him even more. He looks great. He sounded great. Grace sent me a good interview of him during the draft media availability that I retweeted out, and Nuggets Nation likes him because he really loves animals, similar to Jokic. He had such a funny answer. He was like, "I just walk around and look at animals. That's what my hobby is," and I just couldn't stop laughing at that. But yeah, I just am really excited thinking about how the Nuggets can specifically use his skills because I had seen some other scouting on him that talked about his passing and his dribbling, even though it doesn't look super fluid necessarily, like the way that he dribbles, but he still's like doing it and he's dribbling it from half court and attacking, and he has a spin move. A lot of people are like, that's not going to be anything that he's going to be doing. He's not going to be passing a lot. He's not going to be dribbling a lot. But I think with the Nuggets, if he is on that bench unit, it is going to be something that he can do because we do that a lot in our starting unit. He doesn't have to play like Jokic, obviously, because I think even he may be at the four and be more of like an AG type, which was definitely something I wanted to get your thoughts on. And I was trying to investigate a little bit as far as the Nuggets thinking that he will be in the four spot more than the five is what they're leaning
Right.
right now,
Yeah,
which
I was actually going to ask you
that
about
surprised
that
me because
very
I,
thing.
I definitely was thinking more of him as a five and like and as a center who can like pass and post up, even though I know he's like slightly undersized for that, I still had like faith he'd be fine just because he's really athletic, and like that's the thing I'm most excited about is just that he's super athletic, and we need more of that because that was an issue with the Wolves where they were just like kind of killing us with these athletes who were huge. I'm hoping because we had this whole thing with Zeke where it was like should he be a 5 or should he be a 4, and I hope that doesn't become a thing with him. But I think whether he's playing some 4 or some 5, whether it's with Jokic or non-Jokic minutes with the bench, that he has like a natural skill set that'll apply to both. And I don't know if it's like earlier on in his career, he's playing at a 4 and then he switches to a 5, or it's just situation based. But either way, I'm hoping he can kind of like, if he needs to fill in for AAG, have those skills. And if he's filling in for Jokic, he has some of those skills. He doesn't have to be, the most amazing player ever. He's just coming in to spell them for in limited minutes. It would be awesome if he could get to a level where he could play in the playoffs next season when I could see that happening. But yeah, that's basically my thinking on like the 4 and 5. But we'd have to sign another vet center to like really make me feel super comfortable about being at the 4 most of the time next season.
Well, we might still have Zeke on the roster by the time the
Yeah,
season starts,
I
so
know.
maybe they
Yeah.
both play 4.5 and both look better. Who knows? I think that it was interesting how much everyone who had been talking about him, not just Nuggets fans that were interested in who the Nuggets were drafting, but the rest of like draft Twitter talking about DaRon talked about him as a 5 in the NBA. And then we get to the post draft media availability with Calvin Booth, and he spends the entire time basically talking about DaRon as, yeah, no, I see him as like a 4 in the NBA for sure. Like he was very definitive about that. He
Hmm.
talked about some options where um, DaRon is playing next to AG and next to Jokic. So even like next to AG, you kind of picture a facsimile of that happening if we were to still have Zeke on roster by the time the season starts, and they're both kind of playing 4.5 that position. So maybe those lineups like rebound a little bit better. Maybe they like one is able to space and the other one's running delay actions or whatever it is handling in the case of DaRon. And he is so versatile, like we talked about in our um, Nuggets draft prospect preview, that like you said, he's not like amazing at any one thing, but he's really versatile and looks very comfortable in a variety of offensive situations. So there's more opportunities for fitting in different types of lineups playing with Jokic. He is a lob threat, but he can also be a spacer. Essentially, we don't know how good the 3-point shot's actually going to be at the NBA level, but he did end up shooting, I think, 39% from 3 his last season at Dayton. And I remember Cal mentioned during that media availability that the shot form reminds him of like Al Horford with a
Mm,
wide base, a very
that's true.
stable release, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, he shot really well from open, like wide open
Mm-hmm.
threes.
Which is the kinds he's
Obviously,
going to take. Like he's not going to
yeah,
be
I
taking
hope
like
so.
pull-ups and
Yes, but if those defenses are in rotation and they're getting good and they're running around, like you've been saying, maybe they'll get out to him.
he
But
can
yeah,
also dribble, which is the nice thing.
that's
He can
true.
also attack a
There you go.
closeout, which is nice, right? He's not just a catch and shooter that doesn't know what to do when like when
Hmm.
a defender's got a good closeout
And I think
on
he'll be
him.
good against like a little bit smaller players doing that too, like
That's
especially.
right.
So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that would be the case. So if he's playing even if he's playing 4 in starting lineups, he's still pretty like he's a pretty big for a 4. He's a little bit taller than AG, probably weighs around the same, but he's not quite as muscular because he's got a lot of
yeah.
his mass is like in his legs. He's like a very like lanky. Kind of
Hmm.
reminds me in terms of like just the art the body archetype of like a skinnier like Miles Turner,
Yeah.
actually. That
Hmm.
kind of thing where the center of gravity is a little bit higher. So definitely not like AG, but he's
Right.
just like a little bit bigger. So he will have opportunities to deal with smaller players for the most part because there are like what 3 teams in the league that have a 4 that's bigger than him
Hmm.
or even his size.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
It's kind of wild to see those
Plus, he'll
highlights
be
of
playing
him.
against benches most of the time.
I think yeah, that he's gonna have to do the things that all rookies have to do where they gotta emphasize rebounding, they gotta emphasize like hustling. I think the Dayton offense needed him to be more doing the things that are higher up on the priority list of offensive responsibilities, like passing and just like having the ball in his hands a lot and posting up for
He had a
longer.
really high usage. It was like 30 something, I think, his
Right.
last season.
And that definitely will go down. Yeah, just like little things he needs to do, like focus on rebounding, which plays to his strength because he can dribble up the floor really fast, push the pace, just like Jokic does often when he's getting rebounds and looking ahead. I was looking at a shot chart though, and he definitely was weakest in that like from mid range in between to like under,
You
like
mean
right
like
in the
where
paint.
everybody's inefficient?
Yeah, but
Every like non-star player,
even
right?
his mid range jumper is pretty good. It was mostly
In
like
terms
the
of the
like
form.
yeah, and even like the
Okay.
percentage, but it's like the floater like
Oh,
hook shot from a little bit further outside the
mm,
paint was a
like
little bit.
the short mid-range
Yeah,
shots.
the shorter mid
Okay, we could
range were a
work on
little
those.
more rough, which I do think he's, maybe need to develop that, if especially if he's not going to be like a bigger bruising dude. If he's like more on the light, quick side, maybe he'll need to add something like that, like a floater. But otherwise, like I'm super excited for him, and he's great. And if he's going to get like open looks on this team, like the Nuggets like to move the ball, if we can get back to that a little more, he'll get some open shots, open threes, open dunks. And then we haven't even talked about his defense, which is hopefully his rim protection gets even better, everything along those lines. But if he's playing the four, who knows what that looks like on defense? He's going to be taking some bigger, quicker wing players, maybe that obviously Jokic wouldn't be guarding, stuff like that.
I'm more up on his defense if he's playing the five than the four, to be
Yeah,
honest, because the switchability I think is maybe a little bit overstated, at least at first. Maybe he'll get better at it. He can switch out onto guards, but it's not going to be like I wouldn't want it to be the first, option. It'll be
yeah,
interesting to I'm really excited to see what he looks like in summer league, even though it's
mhm,
going to be against sort of first year NBA players and some G League players, etc. It's one of those things where I want him to look really, really good in that
yeah,
setting because it's
right,
still like another level to get to once he gets to actual NBA games. I do want to just sort of smooth some of the sentiments about him being like a potential AG replacement. I think
oh yeah,
a lot of people were upset after we mentioned Calvin's comments about being comfortable with Christian Brown stepping into the starting lineup should KCP leave. And they're like, well, AG's next, all of this stuff. And I really hope AG's not next because in my opinion, if he's gone, we're no longer a title contender, to be
yeah, I
completely honest.
agree. Yeah,
AG, I think, is one of, if not the most switchable player defensively in the entire NBA and like completely 1 through 5. I don't see DaRon even necessarily having that at his ceiling. Maybe that
yeah,
changes. And that's really like AG's main value with Jokic. DaRon's not going to be an AG replacement just because he can catch lobs.
yeah.
Um,
AG is way too unique. It's definitely selling him short to
yeah.
say something like that, unless you're saying when AG and Jokic
He
are
said AG
retired.
2.0, and I'm like, nope, nope, not even that. That's not what it is. And I like DaRon a lot. Like we said, his versatility is very intriguing to me, again, because of all the lineups that he could fit into. And that plays into what we've talked about before with Malone, where, for all the sympathy that we can have for him in this situation where Calvin is giving him one of the youngest rosters in the NBA, I'm pretty sure we're going to be the youngest ones of any of the playoff teams next year. The starters need to be staggered more, regardless of if KCP stays or leaves. All of the bench players need to have more reps with Jokic so that they can become playoff ready, especially if there is, as it seems to be the case right now, no other options on this roster but to get these guys ready for playoff basketball. In order to do that, you have to get reps playing with multiple starters, especially Jokic, obviously. Yeah, so his versatility is gonna
Mhm.
I think help out in that, whether he's playing the 4 or the 5 or the 4.5, alongside like a Zeke.
The good thing is that like he can be played in different coverages, like on a pick and roll,
Yes.
whether he's in the 4 or 5. So it's like he could
Right.
get
I
a
don't know
little
about like dropping too much, especially like a deep drop, because he's
right.
not super tall. Like he's only a little bit taller than AG, for example. Though I've
Yeah,
seen AG be pretty effective, but AG's like a little bit like not scarier, but bulkier. And you're like, am I really going to challenge this guy at the rim? But like you said, very scheme versatile when he's playing, especially that 5 position, at least like when guarding a pick and roll. I like him in blitzes and hard hedges, especially because he really does know how to use his length.
Mhm.
I think it's actually like DaRon is going to bring some interesting tools for the defensive
Yeah.
coordinators on staff with the Nuggets. We have lineups where it's like P. Watt playing the 4 next to Jokic. DaRon's a bit bigger than Peyton, although I think Peyton has a similar level of instinct for the ball. But if you have lineups where you can have Jokic with like if DaRon could maintain the level of shot blocking and rim protection that he did at the college level, playing the 4 next to Jokic, like those kind of lineups could be incredibly scary defensively. Like that's the kind of thing I'm more thinking about, and like the defensive playmaking side
Yeah,
more
exactly.
so than that just being solid. But you did allude to like, is he going to be ready to play in the playoffs next year? I'm not even sure that his offense is the thing I'm most worried about. Even if this like most of his skills are going to look more raw against NBA competition offensively, the thing that's going to get him on the floor in the playoffs is what got Christian on the floor in the playoffs in his rookie year, which is being a low mistake player. And because highlights and lowlights are just the compilations of like all the good things and then all the bad things, I don't actually know what his like mistake rate is going to be, especially as he's transitioning to the NBA level.
Mhm.
So that is what I'm going to be watching for most, because it's going to determine how much he can contribute to those playoff lineups in terms of the theoretical versatility. If he can't even stay on the floor because of the his frequency of mistakes. Although on a roster where there are no other veterans on the bench or no veterans at all as of right now, maybe that won't matter. But
Yeah. Especially if CB is now going to be a starter.
CB is going to be the most, he's going to have the most minutes of any of the third year or younger players on the roster, obviously, right?
Mhm.
And if KCP stays, he will be not the oldest, but I guess longest tenured player on the bench in terms of just minutes. And that's kind of scary. Like, again, unless they make another move. I guess Zeke is there, but has Christian played almost as many minutes as Zeke at this point, just because of all the start
Yeah.
stops with Zeke's
I might guess that he's
career?
played more.
That's
um,
actually that's interesting. I'll look that up
yeah,
so
we'll have
that
to
we have
find
it
that.
for our next episode.
Yeah, his floor is like high enough that he's going to be pretty consistent and limit those mistakes. So I'm pretty hopeful. I'm very happy. I think he's going to be great, but it's just he's going to have to learn how much effort he's going to have to put forth on defense to make those defensive plays with playing with whoever it is with the bench to be in positions to make those plays as well. So it's not like it's a done deal that he's going to be a super success, but he has so many things that we need right now that even if he's just, we just need him to be that role player. Right now, I'm really happy with that pick.
I'm really excited about him. I know I don't like I was actually really, really excited, especially after we made the pick and it was like, oh,
Yeah.
but we made a deal with Phoenix, who I hate. But we got to screw
Oh,
over the
yeah.
Milwaukee Bucks, who I don't necessarily hate, but I know John Horst really likes the same kinds of players that Calvin likes. So I was very happy
Mhm.
that we got to pick DaRon Holmes. I was elated. Forgive my sort of more muted expression today. Everything else that's happened since the
Yeah.
pick was made
It's hard to like get
has
back in that
slightly shaded
mindset.
me a little bit about
I know.
everything else. But I am really excited about DaRon. He also seems to have a good head on his shoulders, like you mentioned with that interview. And I talked about in our last show how I like how he breaks down his own film. He seems like a basketball junkie, and he wanted to come to Denver. Like there were reports about, whether or not a promise was made, he was definitely shutting down workouts with other teams, including notably with the Milwaukee Bucks. I actually took a quick glance onto another draft live stream, and they before the pick was made, they were talking about the fact that DaRon refused their workout, and they were kind of salty about it. So that made me like him
Mhm.
even more. Uh,
There you go.
but yeah, I'm
Duran.
excited about DaRon.
I'm glad that everyone is aligned on that, even if there's lots of opinions on everything else surrounding the
Right.
Nuggets
I
right
think that
now.
it's funny because, yeah, everyone is pretty much aligned on like, we love this pick. We're very happy about it. Even if DaRon wasn't someone's like number one guy, he was on everybody's lists. Yeah. So at least there's that. And everyone's kind of been like fighting internally, like within themselves, because they're so happy about this pick and the fact that not that he was available where we wanted him at 28, but we moved up, got him, didn't get stolen by somebody else. But the other big piece of Nuggets internal news that we should get to is definitely the news about Jamal's extension, which I alluded to earlier.
Yeah, Jamal was finally extended. What was the number? It was
Well,
like 209 4 year or something around there.
so he hasn't been extended yet because
Yeah.
he's not actually extension eligible until July 6th, but it's a 4-year, $208 million, the max extension that they could offer. So was that $52 million a year effectively, and
Yep.
then each year it'll go up at some percentage of the cap. I wanted to talk to you about this because we asked both of our last two guests what they thought about the possibility of Jamal signing extension this summer, and there's two pieces to it. Are the Nuggets going to offer the extension, and is Jamal going to take it? Because everybody has their own incentives in all of this. So when we got this news, basically right before, I believe, the KCP opt-out news, I said, "Oh, that's interesting." Maybe try to pair something bad with something good. They knew that the KCP opt-out news was going to be out there, so like, oh, let's quickly let's try to get this together. What do you think of it from the Nuggets team side? The fact that they're offering this extension now.
Well, I mean, I think it's good from the Nuggets team side. I mean, you're offering him the max they could. Obviously, if they waited a year and offered it to him after another season and he played amazing, got an All-Star, All-NBA, that gives Jamal more money, which
Potentially. They don't have to
potentially.
offer the full supermax, but
Oh, that's
everyone
true.
does.
But you would, yeah, they would.
But what if he didn't have a good season? What if he didn't make All NBA? What if he made All Star with numbers that are slightly better than he normally has, but not quite All NBA, and
Right.
then played 90% of what he did in the playoffs during the championship run?
Yeah. Well, I think if you're the Nuggets, you gotta offer it, and if he wants to not take it and he wants to have a great contract year and whatever it is that he envisions for himself to nail down the contract that he ultimately would want, then he can go ahead and do that. I don't know exactly what he was weighing in his mind, whether he was, because if he gets hurt again next season, that's not going to be good, right? So
That's not good for anybody.
yeah, so
Unless it's Jamal and he signs the contract now.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, look, the Nuggets got offered to him. I know Jamal has like a ton of confidence, so it's not like he's going out there like, oh, I might get hurt again and not play and then tank my value. Like I think he's thinking he's one of the best guards in the league, and he always has a chip on his shoulder. I don't think he looks at his game last playoffs and thinks he struggled because something inherently with his skill or his talent or the team. I think he knows that he wasn't 100% and he was ran into the ground. Even if that's not true, I'm sure that's what he thinks. So I'm just glad that they can get on the same page if the Nuggets are offering this and he takes it. Like, I want Jamal locked up. Obviously, you can trade people, but I wouldn't imagine that Jamal's going to be fine and play really well and continue his career with the Nuggets. And I mean, what he did in the finals is enough for me to want him to stay.
I think it's good to lock him up. I don't think it's like a good vibes thing to like force him to wait until next year's free agency. So I always thought that the team was going to offer this extension. I would have wanted to at least see him through the Olympics before I offer the extension in the summer. See if like, okay, is he actually serious about coming into the season conditioned this time? Like, is he going to be serious? Because we're about to offer a 4-year extension, so that would have locked him up for the next 5 years because he does still have one more year left on his contract before his player option. Obviously great for Jamal for all the reasons that I laid out in our episode with Zamora, where I said I think that Jamal should sign this. The whole like he's competitive, he's going to try to like get all NBA, all of that, and like he had an opportunity to do that, and he kind of didn't really play like it even when he was on the floor. And this just gives him some protection, some insurance, helps lock him up with the team that drafted him, the team that he won a championship with, the team where he gets to play with the best player in the world. I don't really have mixed feelings about it. I think I would still if I didn't think that KCP was walking, although this news came right before this Reggie news. So I was really actually like excited about the Jamal extension. So I'm like, I had finally come to terms with like maybe KCP's gone. Like he's probably gone, especially because he opted out and it was early, like it's 2 days before he really had to. So he probably has an idea of where he's going to go. I think it's probably going to be the Magic. By the time this episode airs, it's probably going to be something else totally different, right? Which just makes me think about the team's cap situation a little bit differently. And we get the Jamal news at the same time. So I'm thinking, okay, we're extending our core, we're trusting our guys, and we're gonna figure out the stuff around them. But then we get the Reggie news, and that totally shifts my opinion of like what exactly is the plan here.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am happy about the extension. I don't like the idea of going into another off season where there is anything near this level of uncertainty. And really, it's just one player that could have and probably will walk this summer, and it's
Hmm.
KCP. Obviously, we're losing Reggie, but that was like a team decision, right? So after kind of going through that, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to deal with anything near this, and it would be way worse going into the summer with Jamal next year, depending on however next season goes, whether we win a championship or not, just because of all of these financial questions that are suddenly coming up.
Yeah, you can't not offer it to him, especially after you had the comments you did where you were talking about his off-season conditioning, like Booth was saying, where he was like talking about he needs to look at people's routines in the off-season. Like, imagine him saying that and then not offering an extension. That's like some weird management stuff. And Jamal is a champion. He's an NBA player. He's one of the best in the league. You don't want to treat your stars like that.
The last thing I'll say on this is that I find it interesting that even you said, like, well, they've got to pay him XYZ, because I think that a lot of people thought under this new CBA that teams would be a little bit more, like,
Reserved.
let's say, yeah, reserved, conservative, stingy with the way that they're doling out these max contracts in particular, because they are the ones that take up the most of the salary cap, right? But we saw Scotty Barnes got his rookie max extension. We saw a bunch of rookie max extensions even last summer after the CBA came into effect. And I don't expect those to stop. I think Cade Cunningham is expected to sign a max extension. Is he eligible? He might not be eligible this summer, but if he is, I'm sure Detroit's going to offer it, because I'm sure Cade would leave at the first opportunity if he didn't have a reason not to. Um, I think the teams are just going to keep paying their top guys.
Oh yeah.
And it's really these, like, we're seeing it with KCP, like, you're going to be the casualty if we're bumping up against this second
Hmm.
apron or the luxury tax or whatever it is, right? Not not our like stars. The stars still are going to get what they get because they theoretically provide outsized value relative to even those max contracts. That's absolutely the case with Jokic, and you know, most of the time, at least in the playoffs, it's the case with Jamal. Though, again, we've talked about the regular season stuff, so I won't harp on that. And I just find that dynamic interesting because we're still sort of learning about how this new CBA is going to change the behaviors of both players and teams when it comes to free agency, contract extensions, role player contract extensions versus like franchise superstar contract extensions, etc. So I just wanted to say that, but I'm really happy for Jamal. I'm happy for the Nuggets that they worked this out, and it's going to become official in all likelihood from all the reports on July 6th. I believe that's going to be before Team Canada's first preparation game before the Olympics, in which they face Team USA. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
Hmm. Yeah, I just want Jamal for a long time, and I still believe in him. And I think he's going to have a good season next season. Oh, also, breaking news. I just saw that the Nuggets just signed Jalen Williams.
So it's actually, I saw that too. It's not a two-way deal. It's an Exhibit 10. I think that lets them basically be part of training camp. I think he'll probably be on the summer league team as well. And then I think it gives the Nuggets the option of converting it to
To a
a two-way
two-way,
contract,
depending.
like
Yes.
before preseason or something like that. So they'll have like basically first rights to get him on a two-way now that he's on this Exhibit 10 deal, which is cool.
Yeah.
We didn't really do anything with our Exhibit 10s last summer, so maybe this will be more interesting and more interesting a year. You talked about Trey Alexander already. Oh, we didn't talk about PJ Hall. I wanted to talk a little bit about PJ Hall because I found that interesting. The word on the street is that PJ Hall, who was signed to a two-way contract by the Nuggets, he's coming from Clemson. He was a teammate of Hunter Tyson when he was at Clemson. I saw a lot of PJ Hall just on the film when I was looking
Yeah.
through the Hunter Tyson scouting stuff last year. I really like him. He's a center. I'm not sure about him like necessarily at the NBA level. I'm not necessarily sure about him on the Nuggets. I just found it interesting that they took Hunter's former teammate on this two-way. Apparently, again, like the word on the street was that they had like a first round grade on him. I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't even know that he was in the draft this year.
Yeah.
Is this like a vibes boost for Hunter Tyson, who didn't really have a, not that he didn't have he didn't have a bad season, he just didn't really play. He played a lot in the G League, and he seems kind of like quiet and timid, which is interesting. And he's not really like a assert himself kind of player. He plays off ball, all that stuff. So that makes sense. He's a role player. He's end of the bench. But there was an instance last season, and maybe you'll remember this, Will, where we played the Chicago Bulls and Torrey Gregg got all up in Will's face. I don't know if there was something there because of some like school rivalries or whatever. They got double text for it. And I was pretty just like shocked at the incident because Hunter was a rookie who had
Yeah.
basically not said more than 2 words like to the media at that point. And he's not like a troublemaker on the court. He just like plays hard. But Torrey kind of got up in his face, was kind of, I think he fouled him out on the perimeter, and then they both like got into like a little like something where they're just kind of like chesting each other up and like, who's gonna be like the tough guy here, blah blah blah. And like Hunter didn't back down. And I was like, oh, I'd like to see that spark again. Again, he didn't get a lot of minutes in the NBA this season, so we didn't really get to see that. I wonder if just having his former teammate on the bench kind of gives him a little bit more confidence. I don't want like weird like cliques or anything to form on the team, but it is nice when everybody like has their guy at least that's there too. And hopefully, we get DeAndre Jordan back to be our like elder statesman glue guy to make sure that the team stays all good. Because the question about the locker room vibe was not something that I really took seriously
Until the
until
end of
the
the season.
playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. And there was some substance to some of that speculation. Like at first I thought it was ridiculous talking about losing Ish Smith and talking about losing Jeff Green and such. Obviously, the players love them. You never want to lose players that you have good relationships with. And I just wouldn't think that the Nuggets leadership would ever be coming into question. But people commented about that with like Bruce Brown, like he brought the energy. But I think it was just more, there just wasn't as much excitement because it was just the same dudes. Like there wasn't anyone bringing something new to the table, really, with the team. So it would be cool to get some new guys. Right now we're bleeding players. We'll bring in some new draft players, but I don't
We're
know what.
bleeding vets.
Yeah, I don't know what new players we're going to bring in to spice some things up and spark new energy. But hopefully there's someone in the pipeline. As hard as it is, I don't see like Tyson and DeAndre Jordan and them even being on the team. But maybe we're just stuck with these guys. We're stuck with
Well,
Zeke and them.
Calvin was asked specifically about, I don't remember if he was asked specifically about DJ and Justin Holiday, but he did bring them up in the post draft comments.
Mm-hmm.
So the question was about free agency either way. And it sounded like, at least with DJ for sure, but I think also Justin Holiday is somebody that they would like to bring back. And Cal said something like tough decisions are going to have to be made. And we're finding out today, apparently,
It was
Reggie's a
Reggie.
casualty of that. But
Yeah,
it seems
exactly.
like, because Booth said, I said DeAndre in particular because he compared him to the Udonis Haslam sort of role. So it seems
Mm-hmm.
like they do want to bring him back to just be that like absolute back of the bench guy, play that role. And I would like to have him back, frankly, because especially if we're losing Reggie, I don't want, as much as I want Jokic and Jamal, especially, but AG and, as MPJ also sort of ages into his prime in the NBA and matures to take on more of that leadership role. There is something to be said for that, like the like
Yeah.
super old
Yeah.
dudes
You
doing
never
that, the
don't
ones
need
that
that.
don't have quite as much of that playing burden on top of sort of trying to keep everybody together emotionally
Mm-hmm.
burden. And I don't want to lose that on top of,
Right.
well, we've already lost Reggie, who we had for the last 2 years, again, including the championship run. And a lot of people talked about how good he was for the locker room that year. So that's going to be a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Justin Holiday just as a player. I just like him as a
Yeah, I like him too.
spot starter, like fill in, whatever. And I thought he was just good in the playoffs, frankly. Like, I don't think you could ask for much more from a minimum guy than what he gave us, which was like starting, like not starting, but coming off the bench, part of the rotation, gave us a lot of good shooting through several games, right? He had some bad shooting games too, but he's a role player, like whatever. He
Mm-hmm.
had some excellent shooting games as well. And he's a good vibes guy and
Yeah.
all of that too.
I'd be
So
completely fine keeping Holiday. Like, I'd be happy to bring him back. I like DJ for his leadership, and I love him as a person. I wouldn't care that much if we lost him, to be honest. But I guess that would depend on the fact that we'd get another vet center who could play more.
Yes, for sure. For
So,
sure. And I have no idea what the plan is on that front
yeah,
now.
exactly.
None
But
whatsoever.
and it would suck to have to move on from like Tyson and even Pickett. As much as like I'd be okay with it, I would want to see them at least. Like, what if they turn into serviceable role players? But
what if we win another championship?
with them, or just without? Like without them,
No,
we
like
couldn't
what if
win
we
it.
won another championship? Like, what do you want to see more? You want to see Hunter and Pickett turn into serviceable role players, or you want to win another championship?
Yeah, no, I want to win the championship.
Okay.
You want to get rid of the players like Reggie and Zeke that we know maybe not gonna fit.
We know what they are.
Yeah, but that's harder to do. Obviously, it's easier to be like, hey, take Hunter Tyson because like he is a good shot, and it's just the reality of the situation. It's tough to have this many guys in this new CBA, and we have an expensive roster. Very, very tough. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Rate us on Spotify or Apple. Leave us a rating on Amazon Music, wherever. Thank you. And remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. So does losing 3 second round picks for nothing.